The moment Jasmine Crockett stepped off the long-haul flight from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C., she felt the weight of the world pressed down on her chest. She'd barely slept 6 hours squeezed between security screenings, private jet banter, and the relentless hum of her own racing mind. When the plane's door opened, the humid air of Reagan National punched her like a fist, carrying the scent of blooming magnolias and exhaust fumes. In that breath of air, she sensed that something bigger than herself had already begun to shift. As she walked through the jet bridge, her phone buzzed, an encrypted message from a trusted aide in Texas. It was labeled urgent. She tapped it without hesitation and read the lines that made her heart skip. Taylor Swift has just exploded in a private recording, threatening to expose a high-ranking senator if the leaked endorsement story doesn't get buried. Source: inside the publication office. Jasmine's pulse quickened. Taylor Swift, chart-topping singer, cultural icon, and, recently, a surprise political backer of a Senate candidate in Tennessee. Her endorsement had been carefully staged to look organic, spontaneously posted on Instagram, seemingly untainted by deep-pocketed donors or party operatives. But someone had discovered otherwise, and that revelation was now making Taylor furious. Worse, it was about to upend the midterm elections. Jasmine slipped the phone into her blazer pocket and forced herself to focus on each step as she exited the plane. She needed to get to her car, to her secure office inside the Capitol. There was no room for panic, only action. She reached the waiting area where her driver, Malcolm, stood beside a sleek black SUV, his eyes shaded behind dark glasses even though the sun had yet to dip below the horizon. Jasmine nodded once, a silent acknowledgement. Malcolm opened the back door. As they drove through the glass corridors of the airport, she stared out at the lanes of taxis and limousines, the early morning dots and dashes of headlights. Everyone here believed they were on the brink of something, another meeting, another deal, another headline. Few knew how precarious the truth could be. By the time they reached her congressional office, the sun was gilding the Potomac with streaks of gold. Jasmine moved swiftly through the marble hallways of the Cannon House office building, her attention split between the text message from her aide and the phone call that was now waiting from a Washington Post reporter who had been tipped off about the leak. She stepped into her small but functional office, lit by a desk lamp that cast a warm circle on a stack of legal briefs. A smudge of coffee on her favorite notebook reminded her of the long night before. Her colleagues had been buzzing about Taylor Swift's political awakening for weeks, her decision to endorse a moderate Democrat in Tennessee, her surprise appearances on campaign trails, and her soaring speeches about civic engagement. Now that image was crumbling under the weight of a mysterious leak that claimed Taylor had been paid millions by a powerful PAC to keep her support quiet until the final weeks of the campaign. Jasmine's gut twisted. If that story went public, it would be taken as proof that Taylor's authenticity was a lie, that her millions of followers were mere collateral in a cynical game of influence. And if Taylor retaliated by naming names, threatening to release recordings implicating a sitting senator, Washington would erupt. The gears of politics would grind to a halt, congressional hearings, cable news carnages, midnight tweets. Jasmine pressed her hand to her chest, willing her heart to settle. She couldn't let fear dictate her moves. She was here to find the truth, to uncover who had orchestrated the leak, and to shield innocent lives from being trampled under a PR blitz gone haywire. "Ma'am, you have a visit," her deputy, Luis, announced as he entered, dark circles under his eyes betraying his fatigue. He placed a discreet envelope on her desk. From Tennessee. It came through secure channels. Jasmine lifted the envelope, ran her fingers over the seal bearing the crest of the Tennessee General Assembly. It contained a short handwritten note. "Please watch this. A." She frowned. Who was A? And why send this to her? She tapped her phone. Explain A's identity. Luis shook his head. No response yet. It's encoded, but we think it's genuine. She opened the envelope. Inside was a USB drive, labeled simply, Taylor __truth. She dropped her hand to her side. Plug it in, she said, barely above a whisper. Luis carried a laptop over and inserted the drive. The screen blinked before revealing a file named ts_private_segment.mp4. Jasmine's breath caught. She clicked play, her sharp congressional training telling her to prepare for the worst. The video loaded. It was shot in a small recording studio, walls padded with gray foam, a lone microphone dangling like a pendulum in front of Taylor Swift's face. She wore a hoodie, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. At first, Taylor spoke calmly, referencing the leaked article from a prominent newspaper that accused her of taking a seven-figure payment to endorse the candidate. Then her voice shifted, calm melted into rage. "You think you can buy my voice? You think you can sneak around behind my back and drop that garbage on the public? F you," she snarled, mouth twisting. "I didn't sign up to be your puppet. I signed up to speak for people without power. But when you try to drag me into your dirt, I will burn this entire town down. I will expose Senator Caldwell for the fraud he is. You want scandal? I'll give it to you." Jasmine watched, frozen, as Taylor's lips moved, her eyes blazing into the camera. The room smelled of stale air and hot electronics, the mic picking up every rasp of anger in Taylor's voice. Jasmine's pulse pounded so loudly she could barely hear her own thoughts. She hit pause. "What are we dealing with?" she asked Luis, voice steady but low. She couldn't let panic seep into her tone. "Who else has this video?" Luis swallowed. "We don't know. It's gone viral on the dark web. Social media chatter says some Alyssa from the Nashville studio leaked it, but no confirmation." Jasmine stood and started pacing, every fiber of her being tensed. She replayed Taylor's threat in her head. If that tape hit mainstream channels, Taylor Swift would be cast as a villain, a fame-hungry bomb thrower. But what if Taylor was telling the truth? What if the leak was a deliberate move by someone seeking leverage over Senator Caldwell or someone else in power? And what if Taylor had recordings that could blow this all wide open? Jasmine's mind spun. Questions tumbled over each other. Who was behind the leak? Why send it to her? Could Taylor be trusted? Could Senator Caldwell be the puppet master? She took a breath and forced herself to sit at her desk. Her fingers flew over her secure line. "Get me an immediate meeting with Taylor Swift's reps," she ordered. "Send a fact sheet to senior staff. Code red. I need background on Senator Caldwell, campaign finances, PAC contributions, public statements on celebrity endorsements. And track every conversation, text, tweet, Insta, related to the leak. I want a full picture within 6 hours." Luis nodded and left to execute her commands. Jasmine slumped back in her chair, tilting her head upward. The fluorescent light above flickered for a second. She closed her eyes, remembering the words of her grandmother. "Truth is a two-edged sword, child. It cuts your enemies, but it can cut you, too." She opened her eyes. She would need to wield that sword tonight and sharpen it until it gleamed. Within minutes, her aides began fielding frantic calls. The Capitol Police contacted her to offer protection, citing increased chatter among extremist groups about Taylor Swift. The Sergeant-at-Arms of the Senate called to offer intelligence reports. Journalists from every network sought on-the-record comments. One Fox News anchor was already claiming Jasmine was the puppet queen of a concert circuit trader. She silenced her phone's notifications, but the buzz persisted. Instead, she reached for a glass half filled with room-temperature water, took a long gulp, and held it. She needed clarity more than closure. She needed to peel back layers and discover the truth, no matter the cost. She dialed a number she rarely used, her friend and confidant, Special Counsel Hadiyah Washington, who worked deep within the Department of Justice. "Hadiyah," Jasmine said when her phone connected. "I've got a video, Taylor Swift in a full-on meltdown about a leaked endorsement story. We suspect it was planted to create chaos." "Crockett, that's huge," Hadiyah replied, her voice calm but firm. "I'm turning up the anchor task force. We'll do a quick chain of custody on the video. I want you to know, if Taylor Swift goes public with threats, you'll be caught in the crossfire. Control the narrative first." Jasmine nodded even though Hadiyah couldn't see her. "Understood. And Hadiyah, do me a favor. Double-check Senator Caldwell's fundraising records. There's something off, but I can't put my finger on it." "Already on it. I'll call you back." The line clicked dead. Jasmine exhaled, fingertips grazing the edge of her desk. She rose and walked toward the window that overlooked the Capitol dome. Early morning traffic glistened like mercury on Independence Avenue. Tourists clustered near the barricades. Senators scurried to breakfast meet and greets. Staffers hustled with portfolios. This city prided itself on order and respect. Today, those pillars were teetering. Her phone buzzed again. A text from a private investigator she'd hired last year for unrelated matters. "Have something. Meet me at 5th and H in 30 minutes. Very sensitive. No signature. No details. Jasmine tapped back. On my way. She grabbed her leather jacket and her government ID, then dashed downstairs to the subterranean garage. The gray SUV idled at the curb, Malcolm at the wheel, engine humming. She slid in the back seat. He glanced over. Where to? He asked. 5th and H. And keep an eye out for tail vehicles, she said, her eyes fixed on the cement walls rushing past. We're not alone in this. Malcolm nodded, and they left the complex, weaving through the labyrinth of government buildings. They turned onto 5th Street, and the block was awash in mid-morning light. People in suits strode purposefully. Someone hawked newspapers with bold headlines about the Swift scandal. Jasmine spotted the investigator, a wiry man she knew as Carter Reyes, standing under a lamppost near a coffee shop, his trench coat plastered to his frame by humidity. When she emerged, he looked up, then engaged her with both eyes. Congresswoman, he greeted, voice low. Carter, Jasmine replied, sliding out of the car and extending her hand. You said it was sensitive. I need details. He ushered her into the coffee shop's back booth, where a slender overhead lamp shed a cone of light on a parchment envelope. He slid it across to her. She opened the envelope inside the booth, the odor of roasted beans in the air as hushed conversations fluttered around. Within, she found several printed pages, bank transfer records, communications logs, and most explosive, a matchbook from the Bluebird Cafe in Nashville, with a dozen scribbles of a phone number and the name Mallory Green. Jasmine's brow furrowed. Mallory Green, a mid-level aide in Senator Caldwell's campaign. She looked at Carter. These are transfer amounts from a PAC named Harmonia Fund. They go directly to Mallory Green's personal account. Why does a campaign aide need that kind of money? She whispered. Carter tapped the papers. Green's been meeting with Taylor Swift's manager in Nashville for months. We think she was the mole, someone within the campaign feeding Taylor's team lines to push the endorsement narrative, then planting a false leak to force Taylor's hand. But that doesn't explain the private recording. That came from inside Taylor's camp. Jasmine's mind raced. It was a two-sided game, Caldwell's team using Taylor to boost credibility, then betraying her trust. And Taylor, in revenge, threatening to expose Caldwell's corruption unless the story was squashed. We need to confirm Green's meetings and that phone number, she said. Call Hadiyah. She needs to know Green is tied to Harmonia Fund. Carter nodded. Already on it. But Congresswoman, she's dangerous. Kalamazoo. Rumor is she threatened a journalist. She keeps a Glock in her purse. Jasmine's eyes narrowed. The cafe's patrons clinked cups around them. The windows rattled as a bus rumbled by. She folded the papers, sliding them into her jacket pocket. Nothing's off limits here, Carter. Find me everything, and I want copies of communications between Taylor's reps and Green. He exhaled. Yes, ma'am. Jasmine left the coffee shop, stepping back into the humid street. She felt the weight of her own choices. Once she uncovered the truth, there would be no half measures. Taylor's reputation was at stake. Caldwell's career, perhaps his freedom, too. She dialed her chief of staff. Laura, I need a secure line set up. Full team briefing. This just got bigger than we thought. She walked back to the car, her mind buzzing. As she climbed into the back seat, she stared out at the expanse of Constitution Avenue. The Capitol dome loomed like a crown, heavy with centuries of promises and betrayals. She slid her phone into her pocket. She couldn't trust any line of communication now. Every message might be intercepted, every call bugged. If this story blew up, and it would blow up, she needed to move fast and stay invisible. By the time Malcolm pulled to a stop outside her office building, storm clouds had gathered over the city. A rumble of thunder echoed, promising rain. Jasmine paid him in cash, refusing the security that leaned too heavily on her name. She told him to park 2 blocks away, then ducked into the building's service entrance, avoiding the main doors. Inside, her staff assembled almost immediately. Laura had pulled everyone into the secure conference room, a windowless chamber with a single steel door and an operator's console for encrypted video feeds. Jasmine looked around at their anxious faces. Some bore bright confidence. Others looked like they'd aged a decade overnight. Thanks for coming, she began. We have credible evidence that Senator Caldwell's campaign funneled PAC money to a campaign aide, Mallory Green, who's been leaking false endorsement information to Taylor Swift's team. That fostered a fraudulent narrative of Taylor's authenticity in the race. Then Green, or somebody in Taylor's camp, leaked a heavily edited article to force Taylor's hand and create a scandal. Taylor is now threatening to expose Caldwell unless that leak is retracted. We're dealing with a manipulative double-cross. Gasps erupted. One aide muttered, "This is bigger than Watergate." Jasmine raised her hand. "Let me finish. We have Taylor's private recording of her furious tirade. We have bank transfers. We have Green's Bluebird meetups on camera. Now, Taylor is furious that Caldwell's team used her like a pawn. She's about to go nuclear on national television. We need to contain this. First, I want Green subpoenaed for contempt if she doesn't meet voluntarily. Second, we reach out to Taylor's camp, her manager, the PR team, with an olive branch. We offer to help her get the truth out cleanly, before someone else spins it. Third, we need to brief the White House, because they'll want to keep this off the Sunday shows. Fourth, investigate if any federal campaign finance laws were broken. This is a felony if proven." They exchanged nods, scribbled notes, typed furiously on laptops. Then Javier, her legislative director, asked, "Ma'am, what if Taylor refuses to cooperate? What if she short-circuits everything and sues?" "She might," Jasmine admitted. "We have to be ready. I'll meet with her reps tonight. We'll lay out a deal. We'll expose the real leak, that Caldwell's campaign is behind it, and in return, Taylor signs a statement that we verify with DOJ so she isn't liable for defamation. We'll go public with Caldwell's corruption. That takes the heat off Taylor. That puts Caldwell on the defensive. We need to be ready. This could all explode in the next 12 hours." As the team dispersed to their tasks, Jasmine stepped into her private office, closing the door behind her. She sank into her chair, head bowed, and thought of her earliest dreams as a child, speaking up for those without a voice, holding power accountable. Now she was on the brink of incinerating one of the nation's most beloved celebrities, or defending her mercilessly, depending on how truth and loyalty collided. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in. A crack of thunder shook the windows. She rubbed her temples, then dialed the secured number for Taylor Swift's manager, Andrea Rice. When Andrea answered, her tone was low, professional, but Jasmine could hear Taylor's erratic breathing in the background. "Andrea, this is Congresswoman Crockett. I have all the evidence. This isn't a stunt. It's crumbling right before it's public. I want to protect Taylor. I want to expose Caldwell's corruption the right way." Silence on the line. Then Andrea's voice, taut, "Congresswoman, Taylor's scared. She's saying if she says anything, she'll be blacklisted. She's lost faith in the system. She thinks Caldwell's tentacles reach to DOJ. She wants assurances." "Then I'll get you those assurances," Jasmine promised. "But Taylor needs to trust me. We meet in person at the Hay Adams Hotel tonight, 7 p.m. No cameras, no leaks. I want Taylor to tell me what she has, her tapes, her witnesses, and we'll build a case that protects her. If she's telling the truth, Caldwell's going down. And the public will know why." Andrea exhaled, brittle. "Fine. Taylor will be there. But if you break this, Congresswoman, I swear—" "You won't regret it," Jasmine cut in softly. "I'll protect her. I'll expose the others." She clicked off. She let out a long breath, straightened her jacket, and prepared for the night ahead. The grand lobby of the Hay Adams Hotel was hushed, Baroque chandeliers refracting light onto Persian rugs. Jasmine arrived early, in a simple navy pantsuit, hair pulled into a low chignon. Her watch read 6:45 p.m. The lobby's crystal vases spilled over with red roses, an unspoken welcome. She took a seat on a velvet chaise, hands folded in her lap, mind racing through everything. Caldwell's donors, Green's alias, Taylor's wrath. The door at the end of the corridor swung open. Andrea Rice appeared, leading Taylor Swift herself. Taylor wore a dark leather jacket over a white t-shirt, jeans, and scuff boots. Her expression was guarded, eyes darting, jaw clenched. Jasmine rose and offered her hand. "Taylor," she said, her tone warm but firm. "Thank you for coming." Taylor's eyes flicked from Jasmine to Andrea, then back. She hesitated before taking Jasmine's hand. "Let's get one thing straight. I didn't ask for any of this. I don't want any part of some political hit job." "I know," Jasmine said, "but they made you a weapon. And now they're trying to paint you as the villain. You need an ally." Taylor looked away, gaze drifting to the lobby's marble fountain. "They made me think I was helping. I believed I was making a difference in Tennessee. Then they leaked that endorsement. I got slammed by social media. They said I was sold out, that my fans didn't matter if I was being paid off. So I recorded what I told them, but I never meant for anyone to hear it. And now they're using it as blackmail. Jasmine offered a sympathetic nod. They did. They wanted you to be the fall girl. Fall girl. Taylor repeated, voice trembling. They want me to say something false or risk it. They're goddamn evil. Her nose flared, eyes brimming with tears. She twisted a ring on her finger, looking like a steel blade inside a velvet glove, fragile, but dangerous. Taylor, I can help you, Jasmine said, leaning closer. We expose Caldwell's campaign for violating campaign finance laws. We show he paid Green to manipulate you. We'll bring the video out under controlled circumstances, with context. They can't hide once they realize the recording was a reaction to betrayal. Taylor let out a shaky laugh. And do you think the public will believe me? The same public that already voted against me because they think I'm too liberal? The same public that will vilify me if I seem like I'm playing politics. Some will, Jasmine admitted. But many will see the truth. You have millions of fans. Let them see a real person, not a brand. You help us expose corruption, and you regain your authenticity. Taylor's eyes softened. I want to believe that. But I've been manipulated before. She tapped her fingers on her knee. I've been used by managers, by labels. I know when someone's spinning me. How do I know you're not spinning me? Jasmine nodded. Ask me anything. I'll answer. She pulled out the envelope with the bank transfers. Here's my proof. Caldwell's campaign, through Green, funnel pack money to you. That's a crime. If you cooperate, we bring Green in. Press charges. Caldwell's reputation is mud. Then you make your own statement. I endorsed him because I believed him, but he lied to me. That's bulletproof. Taylor stared at the evidence. The hush in the lobby felt like a vacuum. She raised her gaze to Jasmine. For a heartbeat, she seemed to consider, could she trust this Congresswoman? Then she exhaled. Okay, I'll do it. But one condition. I do not want my name in the trial. I'll testify, but under a pseudonym. I'll let the world know the facts, but keep myself off the stand for as long as possible. I can't risk my career if this backfires. Deal, Jasmine said without hesitation. I'll file an affidavit protecting your identity. We'll use local counsel in Tennessee to subpoena Rachel Martin, your publicist, to corroborate that you believed nothing was amiss when you endorsed Caldwell. We'll bring Green to testify about Caldwell's orders. We'll have tape from Green's Bluebird meetings. We'll have everything. Taylor exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for weeks. She nodded. Let's do it. They shook on it. For a moment, the chandelier lights cast dancing patterns across their faces, revealing layers of relief, determination, and a hint of fear. Then they sat down, leaning close, voices reduced to whispers, crafting a blueprint for dismantling an entire political apparatus. Over the next 48 hours, Jasmine's office became a war room. Staffers scoured emails, subpoenaed phone records, and mapped Caldwell's donor network. Javier tracked Green's travel logs, flights to Nashville, late-night dinners, secret cash pickups. Laura prepared press releases, drafted talking points, and liaised with DOJ to ensure swift safe harbor. Meanwhile, Taylor's attorney secured an anonymous tip line for witnesses willing to come forward, promising immunity. Rumors spread. Some said Green had ties to organized crime. Others claimed Caldwell's operatives were planting stories in tabloids to distract from the blockbuster leak. Late on the second night, Jasmine attended a classified briefing at the Department of Justice. The room hummed with tension. Federal agents in suits, legal counsel with thick binders, coffee cups on every surface. Special counsel Hadiyah Washington stood at the head of the table. On a large monitor behind her, bank transfers glowed like a constellation, funds leaving Harmonia Fund, landing in Green's account, trickling into Taylor's concession that she believed Caldwell was a reformer. Meanwhile, Caldwell's public statements on the Senate floor, at fundraisers, lied about not knowing any of this. It was perjury. It was fraud. Hadiyah clicked through to a text message exchange between Green and Caldwell. Caldwell's voice, typing in all caps, "Make sure Taylor signs the endorsement piece. We need a boost. Don't tell her about the payment." And Green's, "Understood. She's in the dark. I'll handle it." Jasmine's lips thinned. "This is enough to indict," she said softly. "We have motive, means, and the recording of Green admitting it. Padilla nodded. But remember, Caldwell's defenders will say Taylor willingly endorsed him, greedy for fame, used politics to sell records. We need Swift on the record that she was duped. Jasmine pulled out her secure phone and read a text from Andrea. One more condition from Taylor. If we have to go to trial, she'll do it in D.C., not Tennessee. She doesn't trust that judge. She texted back. Understood. We'll push venue to D.C. Padilla exhaled. We'll coordinate with Tennessee authorities to transfer. That gives Taylor safety from local intimidation. Jasmine nodded. Good. Let's prepare charges for Caldwell, Green, and any third-party intermediaries. We go public in 48 hours. We need maximum impact before Caldwell flees the state or funds disappear. Padilla clicked off. Agreed. Crockett, you'll handle the political fallout. I'll handle the legal. Understood, Jasmine said. The room's overhead lights flickered, casting long shadows across polished oak tables. Outside, Washington was stirring. The sound of sirens, early TV crews setting up outside Caldwell's townhouse, tweets chasing one another like startled birds. For the first time since the call from Andrea, Jasmine felt the tightening of victory, tempered, of course, by the knowledge that even righteous causes could spiral out of control. Midpoint reflection. Standing on the balcony of her modest apartment that evening, Jasmine gazed at the Potomac's silver ribbon snaking through the city. Near midnight, she felt fatigue seep into her bones. The crossroads of celebrity, politics, and power had never been more raw. Taylor Swift, someone whose songs had been the soundtrack of her youth, was now an unlikely ally in a legal and moral fight. And though Jasmine believed in the truth, she couldn't ignore the risks. Public opinion could shift like dune sand. A single misstep in the narrative could topple both Taylor's image and any chance of justice for Caldwell's crimes. She thought of her own motivations, her grandmother's lessons about dignity and respect, her childhood in Texas watching powerful men talk over her mother's voice. Jasmine realized she didn't just want to highlight Caldwell's deceit. She wanted to remind everyone that honesty was worth fighting for, that a famous singer and a congresswoman could unite to defend the powerless. Yet the irony wasn't lost on her. Two women wielding power in different realms, music and politics, standing together against the old patriarchal guard. Could this alliance survive the media circus, the threats, the midnight calls from angry partisans? She replayed Taylor's private rage, the raw, unfiltered fury that exposed how often celebrity and authenticity were weaponized. That moment wasn't about Taylor's stardom, it was about a person demanding respect. Jasmine resolved to channel that same demand, that truth would not be buried. She took a deep breath of warm night air, tasting the tang of nearby street vendors grilling sausages. She let the memory of her grandmother's voice anchor her. The truth is heavy, Jas. Make sure you can carry it. The trial was set for a Tuesday morning in the United States District Court for the District of Columbia. Jasmine woke before dawn, the pale strip of twilight creeping through her blinds. She changed into a charcoal pantsuit and pinned her foreign affairs ribbon discreetly beneath her lapel. Her phone buzzed. A headline on Politico: Swift Crockett Alliance shocks Beltway, celebrity testifies against sitting senator. She frowned at the language, shocks Beltway, but dismissed it. It was just chatter. She needed focus. She arrived at the courthouse 2 hours before the 9 a.m. hearing. Her staff had turned her office into a makeshift command center. Legal briefs splayed across the desk, monitors showing live updates, a secure channel with the DOJ humming in the background. She took a moment to connect to the secure feed and watched as Caldwell's attorneys arrived, a polished team of 3, wearing raincoats despite the clear weather. She asked her staff for intel. Caldwell had retained a high-profile Washington law firm, rumored to bill $2,000 an hour for each partner. The press had campaigned that the senator was above reproach until Jasmine and Taylor had exposed him. Now, his legal argument was that the recordings were tampered with, Green's transfers were legitimate consulting fees, and Taylor was a publicity-seeking pop star with an axe to grind. Jasmine stifled a laugh. The audacity of it burned her chest. In the courtroom, a robed judge, an African-American woman named Judge Lisa Morales, known for her no-nonsense demeanor, took her seat after a soft gavel. Her eyes scanned the room. Then she turned to the packed audience gallery, filled with media, staffers, and a smattering of curious tourists. She raised her voice. This court is now in session. United States of America versus Senator Edward Caldwell, Mallory Green, and Director of Harmonia Fund. Counsel, please identify yourselves. The U.S. Attorney, a tall man with a stern look named Victor Salazar, stood and addressed the bench. Your Honor, the United States is represented by the Honorable Victor Salazar, U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia. Caldwell's lead attorney, a woman named Miranda Price, rose. Your Honor, I'm Miranda Price, representing Senator Caldwell. With me is Thomas Klein and Abigail Monroe. We intend to move to dismiss the charges due to lack of probable cause and challenge the admissibility of the recordings under the Audio-Visual Evidence Act. Jasmine sat tense, aware that Taylor was to testify mid-morning. The prosecutor laid out the charges: conspiracy to commit campaign finance fraud, wire fraud, and tampering with a witness. He asked for bail to be set at $500,000. Caldwell's attorneys retorted that as a sitting U.S. Senator, he was not a flight risk, and his office was a proper address. Judge Morales listened intently, eyes humanly thoughtful. Jasmine found herself wondering if the judge had seen Taylor's recording. How could anyone watch Taylor's rage and think she was making it up? Midway through the morning, the prosecution called its first witness, Mallory Green's bank records custodian. In crisp, clear testimony, the custodian confirmed the unbroken chain of funds from Harmonia Fund to Green's account. Green's attorney objected. Relevance, Your Honor. Judge Morales overruled. The evidence speaks for itself. Next, the prosecution called a Nashville resident who'd seen Green meet with Taylor's manager months ago. Her sparse testimony tied Green to the Bluebird Cafe and secret meetings. Caldwell's attorneys tried to muddy her credibility. Isn't it true that you've been convicted of perjury before? But she remained steady. Jasmine felt a surge of both relief and deep sympathy for the witness, who faced character assassination for telling the truth. Then came the pivotal moment, Taylor Swift's entrance. As she walked into the courtroom, cameras flashed through the open doors, millions of phones lit the moment as if she were on a stage. She looked different, dressed in a tailored gray suit, hair pinned back, eyes sharp and determined. Her fans roared outside. Opponents whispered behind their hands. Jasmine watched her approach the stand, flipping her badge to show her name, Testimony of Jane Doe. The reporters in the gallery barked questions, but Taylor stared straight ahead, giving them no satisfaction. She swore in under oath, I didn't know about any payment. I believed Senator Caldwell was a reformer, and I endorsed him out of genuine belief. After the endorsement, I received an envelope with a payment agreement from Green. When I confronted Green, she denied anything. A week later, the leaked article hit, accusing me of being paid off. I recorded the tirade you've all heard. Then I learned Caldwell's campaign had orchestrated it. The courtroom hung on her every word. Jasmine noticed tears welling in Taylor's eyes, tears of betrayal, of exasperation. I thought singing was the hardest part of my life, Taylor said quietly. I was wrong. Caldwell's attorney, Price, lashed out in cross-examination. Ms. Swift, isn't it true that you've used your platform to boost your own album sales? That you profit from every headline you make? How can we trust your testimony isn't self-serving? Taylor fixed her gaze on Price. There's a difference between using my music to connect with fans and being manipulated to endorse a political figure for money. See, I know my worth. I know when I'm being used. That's why it hurts so much. Because I believed in something real. The gallery broke into applause until the judge called for order. Jasmine felt her chest tighten. Taylor's testimony was raw, authentic, unfiltered, exactly what Jasmine had hoped for. But how would Judge Morales rule? The defense motion would be heard later. Lunch arrived. Jasmine retreated to a small anteroom nicknamed the War Bunker by her aides, a windowless room with only a fluorescent light and a small table. She exhaled, pressing her forehead against her palms. She'd watched Taylor put everything on the line. She'd watched Caldwell lose his composure and whispered arguments with his lawyers. A gust of hot air drifted through the slightly ajar door as a reporter rushed by. Jasmine thought back to an earlier moment, the smell of Taylor's sweat in that recording studio, that edge of fear under her fury. It had been a different recording of a different battle. Now Taylor was fighting for her integrity. Jasmine felt a mix of protectiveness and professional pride. She'd orchestrated the arena in which this would all go down. And now she had to be ready for the fallout. She took out her phone. A text from Andrea, Taylor's prepared to sit for a deposition this afternoon if needed. Changing identities is going well. Jasmine nodded. Then a text from Hadiyah. Judge Morales is tough as nails. Expect a ruling on the defense motion by tonight. She closed her eyes. Tonight. This was going to be a long day. Afternoon, the defense called Caldwell himself to the stand. He claimed ignorance. I never knew Green was taking PAC money to feed misinformation to Ms. Swift. I relied on my campaign team. I don't direct every penny that moves. Caldwell's voice wavered. His hands shook as he held the Bible. Under cross-examination, Carmen Alvarez, public witness for the DOJ, showed him the texts. Make sure you have Taylor's blessing. Caldwell stammered. But his defense attorney objected. Speculation, Your Honor. Jasmine watched as Caldwell glared at Green in the gallery. Green, lips pressed together, her eyes distant. Jasmine's insight, Green, now in a witness protection suite nearby, was likely contemplating the deal DOJ had offered to reduce her sentence. Cinnamon swirl muffins sat untouched beside them on a small plate. Jasmine thought, Green wouldn't be the last to take a bullet for Caldwell, but hopefully she'd realize that her own redemption lay in exposing the truth, no matter how ugly. When the testimony ended for the day, Jasmine left the courthouse by a side exit, avoiding the swirling media throng. She felt weary, but determined. She'd glimpse a shred of relief when an aide whispered, Judge Morales denied the defense motion, charges stand. Good, Jasmine muttered, walking into the waning daylight. She flashed her Congressional ID at the rush of late traffic, hailed a cab, and headed back to her apartment. She needed to decompress. What lay ahead were closing arguments, jury instructions, eventual verdict, months of political drama. But right now, she felt a measure of quiet triumph. The truth was finally out. Second reflection, late story analysis. That night, alone in her living room, Jasmine replayed past days in her mind like a patchwork quilt. Taylor's raw confession in that Nashville studio, the hush of the Hay Adams lobby, the tension in Judge Morales's courtroom. She sipped chamomile tea, the faint aroma soothing the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. She thought about the role of celebrity in politics, how one tweet could topple a candidacy, how one song could galvanize millions. Taylor had been an unwitting pawn until Jasmine intervened. Now, Taylor was a willing warrior. Something deeper occurred to Jasmine. Power wasn't inherent in office or stature. It was inherent in authenticity, an authenticity that refused to be silenced by money or threats. She considered how many constituents she represented, people whose lives would never intersect with Taylor Swift or the Senate floor. Yet this trial was about them. It was about fairness, transparency, and respect. Jasmine reflected on the broader lessons, how quickly public trust eroded when power was abused, how fragile reputations could be, yet how resilient truth was once unleashed. She felt both satisfaction and sorrow, satisfaction that Caldwell's web had been exposed, sorrow for everyone who'd been manipulated or hurt along the way. She realized her role wasn't over. She had to ensure that once Caldwell was removed from office, if the jury returned a guilty verdict, she needed to help reform campaign finance laws so this never happened again. She closed her eyes, imagining a world where endorsements were genuine and money didn't silence the right to honest elections. That vision energized her. She'd turn this victory into lasting reform, so people, celebrities and voters alike, could trust that truth was valued above all. The final day of trial arrived. The courtroom crackled with anticipation as closing arguments commenced. Leslie Chin, the lead prosecutor, stood with measured calm. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, she began, voice resonant. You have heard evidence of a calculated conspiracy. Senator Caldwell used PAC money to buy an endorsement from Taylor Swift, then colluded to leak a false narrative to control her brand. That is not partnership, it is a crime. Green's bank records, Taylor's recording, text messages, they all connect. Caldwell abused his office for personal gain, defrauded the American electorate, and attempted to manipulate a beloved public figure. The only verdict that serves justice is guilty. The jurors watched her, faces impassive, as she laid out the timeline with razor-sharp precision. She ended, if we let this stand, we condone corruption, we condone lies, and we diminish the power of truth. The law demands Caldwell be held accountable. Caldwell's lead attorney, Price, rose for the defense. She paced before the jury, her silk scarf trailing like a banner. Ladies and gentlemen, the prosecution has built a narrative filled with suspicion but lacking proof. Yes, Caldwell met Taylor in Green. Yes, money moved. But money moves in campaigns. That's how democracy functions. Taylor Swift is a savvy businesswoman. She knew what she was doing. She saw public support for Caldwell. She endorsed willingly. The tape you heard was edited to misrepresent her tone. The texts were presented without context. My client believed he was running a legitimate campaign. He is not a criminal. She paused, letting her words sink in. We can't convict a senator for politics. We can't jail a man because his PR failed. Caldwell is innocent. Guilt requires proof beyond a reasonable doubt. The prosecution has not met that burden. Silence followed. Jasmine watched the jury, felt their tension. She knew closing arguments were just a prelude until they retired to deliberate. Judge Morales instructed the jury with a solemnity that silenced the room. You must consider each charge. If you find the elements met beyond a reasonable doubt, you must convict. If not, acquit. Jasmine felt the hush settle around her like a shroud. She thought of Taylor's face at the stand, resilient, unwavering. After what felt like an eternity, the jury filed out. Jasmine stepped outside the grand columns of the courthouse, the spring air cool on her face. She spotted Taylor's team clustered near the bench. Taylor emerged, eyes red-rimmed but resolute. They exchanged a brief nod, no words needed. Jasmine climbed into her awaiting SUV and asked Malcolm to take her to a safe house where she'd stayed during the trial. She needed a quiet place to wait for the verdict. Inside that cramped townhouse, a sense of calm pressed her. A TV flickered quietly with pre-verdict coverage. Commentators speculated how the jury would rule. Jasmine sat at a small wooden table, hands folded, and closed her eyes. She thought of all the nights she'd lost sleep, the whispered plans with Taylor, the relentless pursuit of evidence. Was it enough? An hour later, the doorbell rang. She rose, crossing the creaky floorboards. A U.S. Marshal stood with a sealed envelope. He handed it to Jasmine, who nodded. "Thank you," she said, voice steady. She retreated to the corner where she'd spread out a map of the Capitol. Her fingers trembled as she broke the seal and pulled out the paper. Her eyes scanned the typed lines. We, the jury, find the defendant, Senator Edward Caldwell, guilty on all counts. Her breath caught. Guilty on all counts. Precious seconds ticked as she read and reread. Around her, the air seemed to vibrate. She felt tears prick her eyelids, tears of relief, vindication, sorrow for Taylor's ordeal, anger at the waste of public trust. She folded the paper, placed it in her pocket, and let herself exhale. At that moment, she was no longer just a congresswoman in a political battle. She was a warrior of truth, and justice had prevailed. In the aftermath, the headlines blazed, Senator Caldwell convicted, Taylor's testimony captivates nation. Crockett's crusade, how a congresswoman held a senator to account. Swift and Crockett, unlikely allies in the fight against corruption. Jasmine's phone overflowed with congratulatory messages, some from constituents, some from national figures. But what mattered most was a text from Taylor. "Thank you. For everything. You gave me back my truth." Jasmine stared at those words until the screen glowed in the dim light. 2 weeks later, she stood on the floor of the House to deliver a bill proposal, the Celebrity Endorsement Transparency Act. It required any candidate receiving a celebrity endorsement to file a sworn affidavit detailing financial ties and any agreements. It was a direct response to the Caldwell scandal. Jasmine's voice echoed through the chamber. Let us ensure that when our fellow Americans, musicians, athletes, artists, lend their voices to our democratic process, it is because they believe in the people they support, not because they've been bought or manipulated. We owe them transparency and respect, and we owe our constituents the truth. Applause filled the chamber. She recognized Taylor in the gallery, wearing a plain black coat, hair pinned loosely. Taylor's eyes glinted, pride shining through. Jasmine marveled at how far they'd come, from a furious recording to a converging force for national change. She felt a sense of profound responsibility. This was only the beginning. Weeks turned into months. Caldwell appealed, but his attorneys struggled to find grounds. Green cooperated with prosecutors, testifying in hearings about Caldwell's direct instructions. Harmonia Fund's directors were indicted. Taylor's private recording became a symbol of resistance to hypocrisy. Jasmine maintained a low profile outside Washington, focusing on her constituents back in Texas, visiting town halls, talking to voters who had grown wary of celebrities' influence. She reassured them that this fight wasn't about Taylor Swift versus Caldwell. It was about a system kept honest by vigilant citizens. One afternoon, Jasmine visited a local high school in Fort Worth. She talked about civic engagement, about how one person's courage to speak up under pressure could inspire change. She quoted Martin Luther King Jr., "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter." She saw students' eyes light up as she recounted stories, how the maltreated airport passenger was a congresswoman, how Taylor's raw vulnerability became a weapon against corruption, how the truth prevailed. After the assembly, a young woman named Mia approached her. She wore a Taylor Swift t-shirt under her jacket and clutched a notebook. "Congresswoman Crockett," Mia said, voice trembling, "thank you for what you did. I've been bullied on social media for my political beliefs. I felt powerless until I saw how you stood up. I just wanted you to know, your story matters." Jasmine knelt to be at eye level with Mia. "Don't let anyone silence you. Public office is a privilege, but so is every citizen's voice. Keep it loud, keep it honest." Mia nodded, tears glistening. Jasmine rose, giving her a gentle hug. She walked away through the crowded hallway, feeling lighter than she had in months. The future still held battles. Campaign finance reform would face opposition. Deep pockets would fight transparency. But the Caldwell conviction proved that even the most entrenched power could be challenged when truth was weaponized with courage. Late one evening back in Washington, Jasmine received a call from the Speaker of the House's Chief of Staff. They invited her to keynote the upcoming bipartisan ethics summit. She agreed. In the quiet of her living room, she stared at the card with the summit's logo, an eagle clutching scales. She thought of Taylor, now touring Europe, singing songs infused with new meaning about resilience. She thought of Caldwell, now facing a 10-year sentence, his Senate seat vacant, the Tennessee electorate reeling. She thought of herself, balancing the weight of public expectation and personal integrity. She opened a draft of her speech for the Ethics Summit. The words flowed. "Our republic depends on trust. Trust that when we brief our constituents, we speak honestly. Trust that when we cast votes, we follow our conscience. Trust that when we make allegiances, they are rooted in shared values, not convenience. We must tear down the walls that separate celebrity from governance, money from morality. Only then can we ensure that democracy remains more than a slogan, but a living, breathing promise to each and every American." She paused at the phrase, living, breathing promise. She realized that promise was fragile, but resilience was stronger. She thought of Taylor's fury, her tears, her vulnerability. She thought of Caldwell's downfall, the relief rippling through the Capitol. She recognized that stories, raw, unfiltered stories, were the sinews holding the body politic together. If you gave people truth, even if it stung, they could heal, connect, and move forward. Jasmine tapped save on her speech. She closed her laptop and leaned back, letting out a long breath. The late-night silence wrapped around her. A framed photo on her desk caught her eye, a young Jasmine, cap and gown, beaming after law school graduation. She picked it up and smiled. The girl in the photo had dreamed of making a difference. Tonight, decades later, that dream was a living reality. She'd reshaped an election, saved a celebrity's integrity, and cracked open the door for systemic reform. And yet, she knew the work would never end. There would always be someone seeking to corrupt power. There would always be another Taylor, another senator, another leak. But she was ready. She would keep her sword sharp, her heart ready, her convictions unwavering. Because in the end, when you chose truth over convenience, you chose the path that could slowly, imperfectly, lift a nation. She reached for her phone and typed a message to Taylor. "Your story changed more than you know. Thank you." She hit send, then placed the phone on the table and switched off the lamp. Tomorrow, she would stand before Congress again, ready to fight for the people. Tonight, she leaned back, closed her eyes, and let the weight of her journey settle like a soft cloak. She allowed herself one moment of pride, of quiet triumph, and then, as the city's gentle hum lulled her, she drifted into sleep, prepared to awaken to the next dawn of truth. If you want more jaw-dropping political drama starring Jasmine Crockett, hit subscribe now.